All right, so gentlemen, we've seen how the process has gone 3 days after the election. I know a lot of people had expected that this would be shorter. So let me just bring in, not forgetting that we also have Mr. Ade Atobatele, who joins us via Zoom, and right here, Mr. Chikechude. Both of them have been with us from about an hour ago. But let me bring in Mr. Henshaw, and just an overview of this process while we wait for those figures to be imputed. How would you describe it? Because in spite of the issues, the hiccups, it would seem that the process is going on anyway, because the chairman has said that we're moving until the point of the announcement and the return.
Well, the chairman has made those pronouncements, and I guess Nigerians just have to toe that line, right? And I think that in reality, while we have had, we've had this process for the last 3 days or thereabout, right? In reality, I mean, comparing what's happening right now with previous elections in the country, I think we have taken a couple of steps backwards. For me, that's the reality. We've taken a couple of steps backwards. And I know that every election cycle in this country has had this usual, contestation, people quarreling with the results and so on and so forth. But I have seen in this instance far more contestation and far more, questioning of the results. Generally speaking, we've seen the political party, we've seen the ADC, we have seen the PDP, we have seen the Labour Party coming out to hold press conferences asking for outright cancellation of the polls and doing it afresh, right? And not to rely on social media, but we have seen clear-cut, disturbing evidence of, actual manipulation of ballots, actual manipulation of results. We've seen people coming out to say, listen, what we are hearing being announced does not reflect what actually happened out there on the field, right? And I am actually disturbed at this point, and I have this sense in me, I have this feeling that what we have now is a sense of calm, the kind of calm that happened before a major storm. That's the feeling I have at the moment, because things are calm at the moment. And I just wished that we had paid, we could pay a bit of heed, attention to the many voices of dissent out there, right? I just wish we could just listen for a while and just, what are people saying? What are Nigerians saying?
Because, looking at, by the way, the former South African president, Thabo Mbeki, is right there at the Coalition Center. We've had also the West African Elders Forum, who are also observing this election, and they put out a statement just to go through some of the opinions, and it says that, well, they noted how Nigerians across the country demonstrated faith and patriotism in their country, defying many challenges to perform their civic duties, and says that while the elections were peaceful in a number of places, challenges of delay in arrival of electoral materials, voter suppression, ballot box vandalization, incidents of violence in some states created anxiety among citizens who were passionate to cast their vote. But then the statement goes on to say, we commend Nigerians for the calmness, patience, and maturity they have continued to exhibit as they wait for the coalition process to be concluded. So it looks like, even from the outside view, by the way, this statement was signed by former president of Ghana and former president of Nigeria. So they see that calm, but for them, it looks like they see the calm even enduring for longer.
I agree, absolutely. But what's important are the fine lines of that statement: voter suppression, violence, ballot box snatching. Okay, and I've seen a couple of reports. The NDI also released a report that mentioned similar incidents. Right, we've seen local observers mentioning similar incidents. We've seen also the European Union releasing a report mentioning similar incidents. So we've seen at least 6 to 7 different independent election monitoring bodies, releasing statements that puts our electoral process, this particular election, not so well, right? The question is the scale of malfeasance committed in the electoral process, is the scale. But one fundamental thing is clear, that there have been malfeasance, and I'm worried that we are going past that malfeasance and going ahead to, count the ballots, and declare the results. I'm just worried about what the reaction will be in the public. So, because elections are not just about choosing a president, it goes beyond that. It's about bestowing legitimacy on a president. It's about legitimacy, right? What do Nigerians think about whoever wins? What do they think about that person? Do they think that this person is deserving of being president? It's beyond legality. We could get it right legally. We could tick all the boxes nicely. But does that president have legitimacy? That's the thing we need to start thinking about. We finished the job of ticking the boxes, right, counting the ballots. We're done with that, right? Right now we need to start thinking about it. And this is what I think, personally. And this is just me, right? As a person who sat in a small situation room, listening to people calling and asking me, Ken, what can you do about this? They are suppressing my vote here. So they took the ballot box here. They said they couldn't upload the result here. They said they don't have the password there. All I heard at the entire day were complaints. As somebody who had his ears on the ground listening to these things, what I ask myself is this: what are those people who are awake at 1 a.m. listening to this conclusion of the vote count? What are they thinking? What are they saying about our democracy? What does it do to them in terms of the legitimacy of the president that emerges out of this process? Those are the things we need to think about, and we're not thinking about them.
Yeah, so I would like to just take you back a little bit. Before we went back to the collation center, Mr. Tobatella was talking about the BIVAS, which is pretty much what everyone has been talking about, because that's where some of the alleged suppression now, the inability to upload results, and all of that has been happening. Before now, there's been this issue of the coverage of internet around the country, and there was this conversation around, oh, will it work, will it not work? Do you think that we should have jettisoned use of technology and BIVAS based on that fact that the spread of technology around the country, of internet, broadband, or even mobile telephony, internet? Do you think we should have jettisoned the use of BIVAS and perhaps taken another route?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. I think that that blaming BIVAS, the failure of BIVAS for this, is an unfortunate excuse, right? BIVAS depends on internet, right? And we've got relatively decent spread of effective internet around the country. That's what the banks use. That's what the POSs use, and we've got them in every part of the country. So that's an incoherent excuse. BIVAS. Okay, so I don't want to say BIVAS worked, right? But I can tell you my own experience, and I will only speak about what I heard, what I saw, what I experienced. That's what I can speak about. In several polling units in Rivers State where I monitored, after the votes had been counted and declared, the real question was about uploading it was that the people presiding over the election said they didn't have the passwords to upload them. That's a complaint I consistently heard. There was no complaint, no single complaint about internet. It was that they did not have the password to upload the result. And that's the reality, right? Oh yeah. And that was the consistent. So I didn't hear anything about internet failures. And in several places, from what I heard, people offered people offered their internet to upload these things, right? So it makes me begin to wonder, why and how did BIVAS fail? Was it deliberate that the results were not uploaded? And in several instances, scenes were actually created. People got angry, protests started, right? And I can mention polling units in Rivers State where this happened, right? All across. People were angry that, why wouldn't you upload the results here? But it's important because I've heard I've been listening to the show for a couple of hours, and I've heard people making commentaries and downplaying the role of BIVAS, right? BIVAS, yeah. Let's go back a few years. In 2015 and 2019, the fail-safe for our elections, the mantra we promoted and we pushed was, hey, go out there, vote, stand there, protect your vote, wear joggers, wear canvas, take water, take food, if possible, take a mat, protect your vote. That was the fail-safe, that citizens who vote stayed back and protected their vote. In 2023, INEC said you don't need to do all that. We've got a unique system where we upload the result and you can go home and sleep, right? When that system failed, there was no longer a security for our electoral process. There was no longer any kind of fail-safe, any kind of protection for the ballots. And so the several hours it took from the polling unit to the collation centers, that's where we lost it. That's where the elections failed.
That's why we're here. That's
why we're here where we are. That's why we have this volume of dissent.
But
and we need to address what happened. And we can't just dismiss it by saying internet failed. Come on.
For you, isn't it enough, pardon me, Jeff, that INEC has said all of these concerns, we're taking them on board and then they will be looked into. In fact, I'm sure you'll notice that for everybody that presents, the question is asked, were there disruptions? Why were there disruptions? And I mean, for those who think that let this process continue, since, I mean, that's how it should be according to the laws, and then seek the appropriate channels. And I think I was asking Mr. Chude just before you came. So don't you think that's also maybe some sort of respite for those who feel aggrieved, who saw things actually clearly go wrong, even though some other people said, well, for us, it went very well. So don't you think that should be some sort of respite?
Well, I wouldn't want to be the INEC chairman at this
right
point
now.
in time.
It's not an enviable position.
It's a worst job at the moment, right? It's the worst job in the country at the moment. He's under a lot of fire. But for me, my thinking, this is just Ken Henshaw talking. I do not think it is enough. And I think that one of the biggest problems we've had in governance in this country is that we don't pay enough or adequate attention to what the public is saying, to what the people are saying. We tend to cite laws, right? And behave as if the laws were, there's that saying about law for man or man for law, something like that. I don't know the actual phrase. But we tend to think that the laws should replace what people think, right? So we use the law, manipulate it, excavate all their decadent laws, and just use it to justify situations. The point is this: you've got a large section of these people. If you're listening to the news, if you're listening to social media, if you're watching the news, right? A large part of the public saying this process is flawed. The least you can do is pretend you are listening. That's the least you can do. Sometimes all people want is that you're listening, you're hearing them out, right? This is what happened to NSAS. People kept telling you that, listen, public officials, police officers are killing Nigerians. You didn't listen until you got on the streets. And then you started already making reforms. The same thing is happening now. People are telling you there's something wrong with this process. If I were the INEC chairman, and I don't want to be the INEC chairman, this is what I would have done. I'll simply say, listen, I recognize the fact that there were several cases of malfeasance happening across the entire country, right? I will set up a process, a parallel process, right, to start examining evidence of that level of malfeasance, right? Some kind of body, some kind of committee, something that people can now start looking up to, uploading what they found, the discrepancies between what INEC is saying and what they are saying. A process you can't just tell people you can go to court when this is done, right? No, they won't go to court. Because
a lot has been said. Let's cross over now to our guest in Abuja, Mr. Nkamuke. I'm sure you were also observing things on ground. Mr. Ken talked about the things he heard, which form part of his submission tonight. I don't know, what did you hear? What did you see? What do you hear? What did you see? And some of the take of Mr. Ken, do you share in his sentiment?
Yes, thank you. My name is Joe Nkamuke, actually. I'm the lead for good governance, Caritas Nigeria, JDPC. That's Catholic Secretariat of Nigeria. The greatest problem is that so many people in Nigeria, sizable number, more than 70%, are wondering what is still happening in the National Coalition Center. Because if you take some type of census, people think that the deal was off on Sunday. The gathering of people and calling numbers from states that people think that are quite flawed, but there's no meaning. So as at now, people are wondering what people are still doing there. There is hardly any state where there are no infractions. And these infractions are quite deep cut, in such a way that in every state you hear glory stories. But the whole thing started on that very Saturday morning. Up to the night of Friday, everybody, with the assurance of the INEC chair and the commissioners and so many meetings with so many stakeholders, thought that the picture of the thing was the thing. Only for people to go from 6 o'clock in the morning with all the enthusiasm this election has generated and stayed up to 10, 11, 12, sometimes 3 o'clock, and hearing stories that are very discordant. For example, in some cases, the INEC officials will not say why they didn't come by 8:30 and they came 4 hours later. In other cases, they are there and some of the equipment are not there. How can they just come in? They didn't have BIVAS. How can they come there? They don't have the code after the election. How can they come there? They don't have Form EC8A. How can they come there and just forgot what to do? How can they come there and have only one ink pad? How can they come there? And it became quite very obvious that they are just not there for what how can the police, the security agencies be watching for things that are happening? Some people just come and cut away everything, destroy everything, kill somebody like in Okene and Ida and other places, and just leave. How can they come there? Some people come and destroy all the voting materials. There are so many problems associated with it. But to cap everything up, we are living with this type of reality that the INEC chairman said election will be transmitted from the polling unit straight to the INEC portal, the EREV. And then in November last year, he said everybody should neglect the information going around that INEC had jettisoned that. I know there were so many attempts to get some BIVAS. Why are some politicians afraid of BIVAS? Why are we afraid of going to technology? Now we got to the point where, for no reason, the EREV failed, and the results cannot be transmitted straight to the INEC portal. And then we now went back to manual counting, manual announcement of results. We just went back. When everybody thought that we were taking a step forward, we just went back in a way that is quite very annoying. And nobody is giving any excuse or explaining what happened. Everybody just carry on as if nothing's afoot.
Okay, Mr. Nkamke,
so I think the failure of the system will not be blamed on the machine, on the BIVAS, on the EREV.
Mr. Nkamke,
human beings who have been given the
responsibility. Mr. Nkamke, if I may comment,
that these things work.
If I may comment at this time, INEC gave some explanation. Is whether or not it is satisfactory. Maybe that's the question. But in all of this, at the end of the day, I'm sure there are one or two things that were done right, because I know INEC is receiving a lot of bashing, and we've seen that across board. The analysts here and across board, they've said a lot of things concerning this. But what were the positives that you've seen from this entire process? Because INEC had said that this is going to be an improvement from what was done at the state level, and then we see this incident that occurred. But if you look through beyond the failure to upload these results in real time, what are those things that I think they got right that kind of a silver line in all of this?
Beyond the failure. How can you look beyond the failure? You must count one before two. The fundamental thing is this, that they were promises. People anchored their hope on certain things. They anchored their hope on the fact that there will be electronic transmission, automatic from PU to a portal that you can have access to. That the election starts by 8:30. Perhaps it could be excused that they started by 9 o'clock or 9:30. That on that day, the roads were traffic free. And then they came by 11, 12. And then they must say that this number of people have been taken in for disrupting the election in so many places. And then some people came to the polling units and threatening people that if you don't vote my party, you are finished. And then nobody has ever said that those people have been taken in. And then some people say that they're threatening so many people, and they were dead. How can you overlook that? Of course, before Saturday morning, like I said earlier, everybody was very hopeful. I attended so many meetings in INEC, and I was so hopeful that I think this time around we are going to get it right.
Well, Mr. Nkamke,
suddenly, just cataclysmically, things started changing.
Right. Someone gave this analogy, and just so we can have a rounded conversation, I'd like to take this to Mr. Tobatele. The analogy was, I mean, when plane crashes happen, the goal is usually to get a black box so that you can have a sense of what exactly went wrong and hopefully correct that in the future. And for that person, he was thinking, well, we don't have a full picture yet. Usually there are reports, preliminary reports, and then final reports that are given out. I imagine even Caritas will give out a report, all of the observation groups. We've seen the Elders Forum, the ECOWAS Elders Forum also give their own report. So the thinking for that person is, how about we wait, collate all of that so we don't deal with it bit by bit. So let me take this to Mr. Tobatele and get his thoughts on this in terms of managing projects, because I know that project management has been, or the theories of project management have been brought into this one. When you have a project, you plan for the project, and in terms of implementation, you've had these issues, the good, the bad, and the other sides. How do you approach this?
So the INEC, we have a central server that is now serving some subsidiary servers. We saw this in Osun State, whereby the reports that came out from the BIVAS was different from the report that came out initially. So in the terms of the IREV, this is working in the same way. The figures are going into the initial server and then coming out to a report server, which is why you can find that beautiful girl's picture when you were looking for a particular polling booth. It's a different server from the actual server where the data is put up. And you are quite right about the black box analogy. We needed an audit. INEC never did an audit of this system that was satisfactory for anybody. I've never heard of an audit of the system or whatever. We need to go back in this week and see if audit those particular parts, so that in the next couple of days we can fix things. These things are not particularly difficult to fix. There is no capacity issue. Let me put that, but let's get that right from the beginning. There was never a capacity issue. There's a capacity issue from the main server to the reporting servers, not from the BIVAS to the servers. And as I said, the BIVAS may give you the information late, but the information is still correct, which is why we're getting polling booths that are being knocked out. As I said, the black box analogy is quite right. We should be getting the reports from those particular subsidiary servers in the INEC system as to what went wrong with them, because the BIVAS is actually updated when it can see internet access.
Speak to the costs, really, because the opinions are quite diverse. Some people think, I mean, you've heard the Labour Party, heard the PDP, the joint press conference they had with the ADC, thinking, well, this should actually stop. Let's stop this and do it over again. Some have said that, well, maybe it's because they're not at least getting the projected figures that they expected to get in the election. And for some people, they said, well, the process has begun. Let us get to the end. And as you said, the black box analogy, which I referred to earlier on. So in terms of weighing the costs, which is costlier, to pause this right now, as some have asked for, or to finish it and then now look at the issues and hopefully get some remediation? So in terms of weighing the costs, how do you see it?
I don't see the cost of the country being a cost that we need to be measuring. Our democracy is something that is sacrosanct. There is no amount of money that can be put, a price that can be put on that. But I would like you to look back at the Kenyan situation.
When I say cost, I didn't mean money. I mean like which will cost us more, which is the better way to go. That's when I mean cost. I'm not talking about money. When weighing the cost, not money. That is.
As I the cost of stopping right now is to say that the BIVAS system, the INEC system, the chairman, they all got it wrong. Then the question is, how do you get it right? What would you do in the next couple of days to get it right? Are you going to fire the chairman? Are you going to put a new chairman in place? Are you going to put a new GSM network in place? The cost of stopping right now is not to know what the end of the procedure would be. The end of the procedure really doesn't need to go in. We're not swearing anybody in the next 1 week or so. We can always have this election again, if need be. But the process needs to finish so that you can figure out where all the rivers end, where the tributaries get into the sea. You can't stop it. You can't figure that out from just looking at a small stream. So the process needs to end so that we can figure out what went wrong, if anything went wrong, and fix it. We've got time. There is no hurry. We do not need to swear anybody in until May 1st. We can fix this thing. If we really need to run the election again, then we'll run it again. We're human beings. There's nothing stopping us from doing that.
Indeed, Mr. Atobatala, let me just quickly come in here. You know, so this is not the first time we're using the BIVAS, you know, and INEC in the past has also admitted that there were some challenges, and it was going to, I mean, they were going to review those challenges with the device. So we've made that, there was that point, there was room for that review before the elections now. And, you know, we've conducted this elections, and again, those challenges that were experienced the other time have come again. So what is now the guarantee that perhaps, you know, the reviews we've had, the challenges we've identified will be resolved before the next elections?
We're human beings. There are no guarantees. If you mentioned the last one was the Ocean State, where they said that a particular server was not updated to give the live results, and that what the result that they gave was from the main server. I believe that they may have fixed that by now. As I said, we should have done an audit on this system a long time ago. The new one now is the IREV, where you are looking at pictures of girls rather than looking at pictures of results. They're going to look at that again in the next couple of weeks, or rather the next couple of days. There is no guarantee that another part of the system may not fail, because there has been no audit. We need an audit on the system, but we won't know where these things are failing until we get to the end. It's as simple as that.
Simple as it may seem, you know, one of also the things, or one of the excuses that INEC had was the fact that they were migrating, you know, from a server that was meant for off-cycle elections. So, I mean, one would have thought that before now, you know, there was ample time for INEC to perhaps, you know, make the migration and then, you know, have that robust server or big enough server to handle all the pings and the requests. But I mean, you are the expert. Was there room for that to happen, or is it? Do you need to have the requests first before you make the move from a smaller to a bigger server? How does it work?
I don't believe that there was a capacity issue. I believe that they hadn't got the right server for the reporting. That is a different server for the uploading. It's exactly the same thing that happened with the BIVAS report that in the Ocean State. They had a central server, they had a subsidiary server. The subsidiary server was not prepared to take the information, and they gave the wrong information to the Oyetola governorship, and that allowed Oyetola to come back. It's a sense of failure. It's as simple as that on the IREV situation. But the question that needs to be asked really is, in the information on the central server from which the IREV will pull its information, is that information intact? And I believe that it is. So what we're seeing is a reporting issue, not an uploading issue. The uploading is actually happening. But if you suddenly get an uploading at 3 o'clock in the morning because somebody didn't see internet and it suddenly sees internet then, you're going to start wondering who was hacking the system. No one's hacking the system. It's just them that it got it. So I believe that also that was part of the problem. They were seeing uploadings at some very weird times when the BIVAS was suddenly seeing the internet and uploading. And I don't think they wanted to be showing people this information that was coming in at very weird times so that they won't be accused of it being hacked.
Let's bring this back to our Lagos studio and go back to Mr. Chude. With the benefit of this insight, at least from an expert, I'm not a techie person, I just know how to use my devices. I don't know the back end. But with him saying this is a reporting issue, not an upload issue, trying to break it down so we understand that, okay, this is what happens when you upload, this is how long it takes, in the context of perhaps the network reality we have in Nigeria, and then the analogy of the black box. Would you also, I don't know, agree or disagree with him on that one?
Don't forget that he has not been given access to these BIVAS. So he's only depending on what he has been told by INEC, that is at the receiving end, that is looking for a reason to give for this monumental failure. Because this failure has become an embarrassment to the people of this country.
Just to be clear, do you have a reason to doubt INEC? I mean, from the pedigree, the elections that were, and I think a lot of people talk about the Ekiti, Osun elections, even the Ondo, Edo elections, and I think largely a lot of people commended INEC.
Well, there was a failure. I was one of those that commended INEC.
Yeah.
We did profusely, defended them, fought for them when it became necessary, fought for them for the Electoral Act, to get the Electoral Act passed and signed,
Yeah.
fought for them so that they have a one-line charge, a year before the election, so things can be easy and all that. So we have a stake in defending INEC, but we also have a stake because we realize that our country is bigger than INEC, is bigger than every single one of us. So look, these are human elements. You're talking about INEC, you're talking about 700 polling units where over voting was reported. 700 polling units, there were people in those polling units that failed. They were ad hoc staff of INEC. So what does it mean is that, what it means is that you have the good, the bad, and the ugly. So it's also part of that. But I even want to go beyond that, to this issue of what do we do? What recourse do we seek? Obviously, we're back again one more time to the courts.
To where we started from.
To the courts. And, people have made this argument all this time that we need to take these matters that should end at the polling unit, we need to take them away from the courts. But, there is a saying that when a known thief encourages you to go to court, just know that his elder brother is the judge. Now, so what are we saying? You keep on doing these things, our politicians, every time, one infraction or the other, and then when there's a problem, they say go to court. And you go to court, they're waiting for you. And then you start accusing the court of interfering too much in the political process. You start accusing them of corruption, but you have created that environment for all of these things to happen. And so once more, we have created another environment for the courts and the lawyers to get busy, over a political process that should have been settled at, the polling unit. Our politicians have learned nothing and they have forgotten nothing. And I remember the last time I was here, I told that the weakest link in our democratization process are the politicians. They should be the biggest beneficiaries of elections because politics, governance is about, the politics, the act of getting to governance is the politics of it, and it is the politicians that benefit from it. Of course, they're also losers, but even if they lose today, tomorrow they can, win again. The president ran for election how many times? He became president eventually, but you don't try to destroy the process. And I think there's something wrong with all of us getting used to the fact that a man will commit all kinds of atrocities and then tell you to go to court. It gets to a level, and because we must look at this deeply, it gets to a level where the person believes he will get no justice in the courts. And then he begins to look for other means, and then we all suffer the consequences. So we must look for a way, to approach these things differently. There are questions that need to be asked.
Isn't that
deep
preempting
questions.
the courts?
Yeah, that's what I wanted to ask. Isn't that preempting the court? But we're going to come to the question of preempting the court because right now we're going from INEC and then we're already ahead of the game in terms of we're heading to the courts to decide whether or not.
No,
we're not there.
No. Wait.
We're not there yet. The collation is just concluded. They've just concluded the collation. A result will be announced hopefully eventually, and then another set of conversation. But if we look back, we're going to see that a lot of of things happen beyond the presidential election. Let's remember that it's the presidential and the National Assembly elections. As much as the bashing has been coming for the BIVAS and the upload, there are so many things that happen. For instance, the Labour Party. I'm coming to you, Mr. Ken, on this one. The Labour Party took Lagos at the end of the day. This is the state of the APC presidential candidate, who they call the Jagaban. Literally, nobody would have believed that the Lagos State will experience such kind of upset, but eventually Tinubu lost Lagos State. And beyond that, the G5 governors, you see what happened. Now, some of them could not secure their tickets to go to the Senate. We have Ifeanyi Ugwuanyi, we have Samuel Otom, and the rest of them. So let's look at that as well. Hasn't technology played an important role eventually beyond just looking at what's happening at the NCC? That's the National Collation Center. There are upsets across state. Governors, sitting governors. I like to use that word beyond incumbent because I know the power of a governor or a president could not go to the Senate that they aspired for because of the party. Is there not a plus in this whole process?
I think for some people that could be construed as a plus. But when you look, and that you only consider it as a plus when what you're looking at as the purpose of elections is when you see the purpose of election as simply the production of winners in elections, right? You know, governors, presidents, members of the National Assembly. That's when that seems like a plus, because there were offsets here and there and overturns here and there. But I don't see that, right? I see elections more about the credibility of the process, the trustworthiness of the process, right? And the analyst on Zoom, he said he admitted, I mean, a lot of people also in Nigeria do admit that the process, something went wrong somewhere. BIVAS, accreditation, mistakes were made here and there, late arrival of materials, logistics. We all admit that things went wrong. But we do not admit that it is fundamental to the elections. That's where we stand. We all admit, you all admit that something went wrong. But to what extent is that fundamental to the elections? And that's because we are looking at, I think we're looking at it in a different way, right? For me, the least part of the election cycle is actually what's happening in Abuja right now. That's the least part, where the results are aggregated and announced. That's the least part. The real part is that moment where citizens come out and cast their vote. And if you failed at that point, you know, that spectrum of people coming out on time, getting their accreditation done on time, casting their votes on time, and getting the results announced on time, and getting the necessary information updated on the BIVAS. If you failed there, that is the largest spectrum of the elections. You failed. You have failed, right? But people don't see that as the most fundamental part of the cycle. And overwhelming evidence indicates that this process failed there at that point. So why do we insist that? So it's failed, right? The house is broken. The house is broken. The roofs are falling off. The decking is caving in, right? But let's just take it to the end. Let's finish the construction. Let's just paint it. The instance we're done painting, then we can now go and fix the errors. I think there's something fundamentally wrong with that logic, right? I think we need to pay heed to what people are saying. If this process is faulty, why? I mean, are we going to all go into apocalypse if we halt this process for a second and say, let me hear what you're saying? All I want is for people to listen to people. What are people saying?
You think INEC is not listening enough?
Absolutely not. Absolutely. I mean, what's the evidence of listening? Is to admit that, yeah, what you said about this, I've seen it. What you said about this, I've seen it. Listening is not enough, but do you take action based on what you've heard?
But the chairman of INEC, I remember when the agent of the PDP raised issues. I'm sure you, I mean, it's trending online now. Yeah, exactly. The chairman of INEC actually listened all through. The first time, the second time, other issues that were raised, he listened. And he acknowledged that, well, I have listened to you. And I think maybe the challenge now is expectations. Most people expect that at least the demands made will be acceded to. And another the flip side of this conversation is then, so is it then too much to ask that people go through the procedure of going to courts, following that process, which is laid down, which is actually the recognized channel. To pursue these grievances? And as you said, I think you said, would heaven fall? I don't know if that's a term you use. So would heaven fall if people were to pursue that and perhaps have faith in the judiciary? Because we've seen time and again the judiciary coming through for people and at least giving that justice that people deserve. So is it too much to ask for? Just as you said, is that other option too much to ask for?
So, Coyote, I'll turn it the other way, right? Is the option of INEC addressing these grievances now too much to ask for? The people, Nigerians are also asking the same question.
Is it addressing it or doing what?
Doing something about, I mean, so right now, the question is this, right? So if there's multiple...
Sorry for cutting. What do you think INEC is not doing? Because it's been saying, so what exactly do you think INEC is not doing?
So if there's multiple voting, right, in a polling unit, whose responsibility is it to cancel that poll? It's that of INEC, right? So there are certain basic electoral malfeasance which is at the level of INEC.
Okay, we just got some results.
The kind of thing we're discussing in terms of BIVAS are currently at that level where INEC can address. Why do we need to take it to the courts?
If I can read some of the results for you, which we've gotten, and how results were actually cancelled across polling units for reasons of overvoting. And I'm sure you've been following the results announcement. Each time they come to announce from the state, the chairman asks, so did you have any issues?
Yes.
And I think for Borno, there were maybe 12 that were cancelled as a result of, I think, overvoting and another issue. And that has been across board. And I think that's the question we're raising about maybe one of the positives of BIVAS. Helps you to identify overvoting. But so the question Jeff raised, if you look at the screen behind us, maybe I'll show you that, and how the results has spread so far. We've seen Labour Party getting 11 states and the FCT. Now, this is the same Labour Party that just started gaining traction, less than a year ago, with a lot of support from young people and others. And we see the APC, which you'll expect will get a lot of states based on the incumbency power, getting 12 states, even the PDP coming to get 12 states, NNPP getting 1 state in Kano. I mean, for a lot of people, that's understandable. So seeing that spread, isn't that enough to say that at least the wishes of the people, the voting public, a lot of them saw that as a referendum on government and they used that to punish the government. So don't you think that that at least showed the wishes of the people to a large extent?
That is not how electoral spread is not how you determine the wishes of the people.
How else do you do that?
How else do you determine that?
So the spread of an election, right, it's not necessarily how you determine the wishes of the people. In the instance of our conversation, the people have raised serious concerns about the process, procedural concerns, right? Now, like I said earlier, for me, the issue is not who won where and how well spread it was. The issue for me is not who got the majority of the votes and who even wins. The issue for me is the legitimacy of the process.
If I may ask,
yes,
clearly you observed the elections.
Yes,
you were in the situation room. You had complaints. What was the spread? I mean, to what extent did you observe? Was it just in Lagos? Was it just to what was the spread?
It was nationwide.
Nationwide.
So we had an Ushahidi platform called Our Votes Count, and we had people, citizen reporters, and we didn't rely on your conventional monitors. We relied on people who were actually going out to cast their votes, right? We relied on them to update their, and we got over 500, reports from different people all across the country. And we sat down, analyzed each of these reports, read them out, tweeted some of them, right, that were very disturbing. Some were not even uploaded on the portal, they were phone calls. But everywhere we got reports of, we got a few places where things went well, and we also said so, right? But in several instances, things, I heard frustrated voices. Nigerians actually say, what happens to me now? I've been here all day. I'm not going to vote, right? Polling units where there are over 1,000 people, and only about 200 got to vote. I heard those kind of things. And those results have been announced.
Well, let's go to Mr. Kamke in Abuja. Victor?
Yeah, I was just actually going to pose the same question to Mr. Kamke. As regards what you got from the field, what you were hearing, was there at any point where you had some positive feedback from some of the places that you visited, or if you were in the situation room, just like Mr. Henshaw here, were there any positives that you got?
Okay, fine. Let's put it in perspective. The Caritas JDPC deployed, INEC gave us 6,000 slots, arguably the largest And we had, out of that, we had 3,416 accredited observers, and the rest are citizen observers all over the country. So it's like the Catholic Church has 56 dioceses, and we're in all the 56 dioceses, covering all 36 states and Abuja. So we deployed a mobile observation app. Our observers were feeding in information from these apps. There are two things that are outstanding. Number one is, on whose side at this point in time is INEC, the people or some interests? Now, if INEC is on the side of the people, they should have listened. Because what we are facing have two dimensions. The first dimension is some type of unimaginable unpreparedness on behalf of INEC. And then these failures that we are recording, that some politicians took advantage of. On the first one, INEC moved from 119,000 PUs to 176,846, 240 off PUs. And everybody thought that at least when you walk into a PU, none will have number more than 250 or 500 at most. But here you are. You have a PU like in Durumi, Abuja here, that have only 75 people, number 138. And just near it, contiguous, you have 021, 022 that have 3,000, and another one 1,870. Then nearer it, you have another one that is 50, another one that is 100. These things, are there happenstances? No. I mean, their system would have shown them that these numbers should have been spread out so that they would be like 250, 500, so it will be a little seamless. Worse still, for these ones that have like 1,750 or 2,000 or so, there's only one BIVAS machine. And this BIVAS machine, the operators were taking their time. And of course, there's only one ink pad. They know the number that they were coming to face, but everything was in deficit. So such that people were now in the polling unit till morning. Now, that's one side of it before the election. During the election, we have heard of suddenly that in some states, like I said before, they said they don't have codes. How come other people have codes? And in some states, 1, 2, 3, or 4 states, they don't have codes. Is this one rocket science? So, from our observers all over the country, the story having disappointment. In fact, before I came here, we have a Zoom meeting with the 56 directors of the Justice and Peace all over the country. And none of them, told a story that you can clap for. Everybody was just quite shocked at the expectations, how the expectations were dashed. You know, how the expectations were dashed. And how people who perpetrated these atrocities and infringement just went free. These are the things that worry a lot of people in this type of setting. So why is the thing continuing? And somebody asked the question, cost. I know the cost is not money, but even if it's money, how much should we not spend to get it right? Even if it is money. But if it's not money, if it's intangible things, what is the need continuing with a process that is already flawed? To start afresh is just human. I've made a mistake. Let me start afresh. And then people cannot think to say, okay, let us go to court and resolve it. The courts are not meant to resolve electoral seats. Elections should be won in the polling booths and not in the courts. And then go to court, you go to this, 2007, some people were in court for 3 years. Why people were sworn in and they were ruling using state money to pursue their own cases. Is that what will continue? Can't we make improvement? And why is technology very difficult for us? India has a electoral population of around 550 million people. And they've been using technology from beginning to the end.
Right. I'm sorry, did
And
you say that the
you don't have
court...
instructions.
Pardon
Why
me?
wouldn't we could have gone to study their system.
Pardon me, sir.
And
Did
that's
you say
it.
that the courts are not there to resolve electoral issues? Some would say, so why do we have the election tribunals then?
Yes, the courts are there, and that's exactly what is wrong with the system. Why should the courts resolve election issues? Election matters should be resolved in the polling booths.
So since
courts
we're...
should be one-off.
Right,
You should not, okay, at the end of this, there will be floods of court cases and so many of them that the courts might even get confused.
So since we're a nation...
Why would we wait until the courts resolve it?
Right. I mean, since we're a nation then that respects laws, that's why we have a constitution. Looking through the laws that guide our conduct of elections, from the Constitution to the Electoral Act, does the chairman of INEC have the constitutional powers to cancel an election? And I hope that that's something we have also looked into. Do you think, or have you seen any provision that empowers the INEC chairman to cancel the announcement, the collation?
Okay, I think section 61 to 5 for the electoral law excludes that if BIVAS fails, then the election will be cancelled and repeated in 24 hours. There is one other part of electoral law that says that if the system, the process is disrupted by thuggery, hooligan violence, and whatever, the INEC, INEC authorities have rights to cancel it. There are so many rights they have to do a lot of things. But if, just look at the one funny thing. In Kano, there are 44 local governments. The election results arrive from Kano to Abuja, but Abuja has 6 area councils. It took 96 hours for election results to arrive from Abuja to Abuja. And then we say we are waiting for court. What is delaying 6 area councils as against 44? Or as against what's happening in Imo State or what happened in River State? What is the delay all about? Or Lagos and all the things we are hearing. So what I'm saying is that the court, very wonderful institution, meant to resolve issues, and the Supreme Court, wonderful. Section 232 of the Constitution gives the Supreme Court power of judicial review in every federalism or federal system. They have it. Our own is section 232. But the problem is, in exercising these rights, why must we not do the right thing before going there? Why would it not be exception condition that some cases go to court? Why would it be that everything is relied upon? Look at some primary cases of primary election were resolved some hours to the election. The thing that happened May last year dragged on till hours to the election. I mean, things can't continue this way.
I'm looking at...
thought that everything was all right now once we got to this.
Mr. Nkamuka, I'm trying to look at the results. I'm trying to go back there to the results. Some of the results that came in just this night from Borno, Taraba, and I think River State. We could clearly see that some results were cancelled due to overvoting in some of the polling units. And when you talk about cancellation, just like my colleague did ask, this cancellation, I think they are done at the polling unit level.
No. Let's get back to the scene of crime. The thing, what I'm talking about cancellation is that they were standards promised. One of the standards is that there will be, from the polling unit, the results should move to the portal, INEC portal. Listen, if that had happened, these arguments shouldn't have continued. Yeah. And then there is this argument after 24 hours, going to 48 hours, that the thing collapsed. And the example, the reason given is just so poor. So the point is not that in some cases, some results were cancelled, like Imo State 194. Why would it take Imo State 96 hours to get the result for 27 local governments? Why would it take that much? Why would it take River State 96 hours? for 23 governments to get their results.
So Mr. Nkamuka,
why would it take that long?
So, Mr. Nkamuka,
Now, if the result had not uploaded,
if I may,
firstly,
Mr. Nkamuka,
before the voting.
Mr. Nkamuka, sorry for butting in. Before bringing it down to the studio, so your challenge is not the fact that cancellations were done, because we could see from different states that there were cancellations. Is the speed at which it was done? Is that the problem?
No, well, that's part of the problem. The problem is that the cancellation does not even mirror the level of infractions in those areas. The level of infractions are double, triple, or more than the cancellations. The point is that they were standards promised. Those standards were not met, and politicians took advantage of the lapses to commit whatever happened in the last 96 hours.
So do you have like an empirical evidence of what the extent at which these infractions have happened?
The greatest empirical evidence is how many results have been uploaded to IREF as at now. The last time I checked, they were not up to 80,000 out of PUs, out of 176,606.
At the moment,
so what else is somebody looking for?
At the moment,
why is this so slow?
At the moment, it's 125,456 results that have been uploaded out of the 176,606 that we expected.
That's right. After 96 hours. After 96 hours, you have to put it in perspective. After 96 hours, we're able to upload that number, 125 Begley number, and it is coming by installments and in a way that the people don't understand. Why are we uploading after 96 hours 125,000 polling units out of 176,606? Why? Why is it coming in trickles? The elections were conducted on Saturday, and after the elections, the team was supposed to upload straight. Even if he did upload then, why is it taking? Like in some states, they said, no, we can't upload it there. We must go to INEC office. That's where we have network. So have they not gone to INEC office since then in those areas since Saturday till today?
Mr. Nkamuke, I mean, again, it's technology we're dealing with here. So we understand. I mean, I'm trying to put this thing into perspective, as to how this is going to work. Looking at the fact that, we're doing this not for the first time, but, like I said earlier on, some reviews have been made, but, we're still where we are. But let me just hold you there for a bit. Let me quickly bring in Mr. Atobatele, who is pretty much, he has like a hands-on perspective on the devices or systems, so to speak. Now, Mr. Atobatele, speaking about the latency now of the system or the device. So we're looking at the fact that he is saying that it's taken a lot of time, and one of the issues that one could imagine, apart from the server issue that INEC had even made mention of earlier on, is the fact that there could have been interference. But how possible is this in this instance? Because we've seen this happen in other climes. So what's the possibility that could have been perhaps the reason why we've had this delays in terms of the upload, or the reason behind the slow upload of results? Sorry, can you unmute your mic, please?
I'm not muted.
You were for the beginning, but we can hear you now.
You might have noticed that at no point on the collation centers or at any of the collation statements has the word rigging been used. Various activities have been used by yourselves and other people. First of all the uploads should have happened within 24 hours. Let's put it that way. All the uploads to the central server should have happened within 24 hours. Because as the gentleman pointed out, as soon as a BIVAS machine gets back to INEC, it sees the internet. And there's no reason why it shouldn't be up there. The point is, the IREV system wasn't working. That's a separate system from the uploading system. And only God knows why that system wasn't there. And as Mr. Henshaw pointed out, we are wondering about a deficit of trust. The IREV system broke down. Whatever reason it broke down, we don't know. And that is where the deficit of trust is right now. Not the uploading, because the uploading, the point that we're not making about the uploading and the BIVAS system is that it is actually catching the rigging at the root source. But we're not seeing that on the IREF system. And as I said, all the uploads should have been to the central server by now, but the IREF system is not the central server. It is a subsidiary server, and the information has to be pulled back. We didn't know this until Osun State, when we suddenly realized that the reporting that comes off INEC systems are not the central server, but a subsidiary server. That is why the results that came out of Osun State that were given to the Oyetola people were different from the results that were announced by INEC. They have central server and they have reporting servers that are subsidiary servers. The IREF server is a subsidiary server. Why it broke down, only God knows. But all the uploading should have been done to the central server as soon as a BIVAS machine was there. Why it's not been pulled down to the IREF server, that is what INEC needs to explain to us.
And again, I'm asking, do you see any form of interference, human interference, in the systems?
I would not like to say that once it got to INEC, there was an interference, because as I pointed out, the BIVAS system caught the interference that happened at the polling booths. If there was another set of interference, that is a very, very grave allegation, because that is now saying that once the BIVAS system has caught people at the polling booth to overvoting, there are now people that are inside INEC now, not to ad hoc staff, inside INEC that are manipulating the figures. I would not like to be the one to point fingers there.
But I mean, of course, I'm not pointing fingers, but if I take you back to some few years ago, it's happened before. Some INEC staff were picked because of, you know, such manipulation, so to speak now. So I'm not saying it's happened now, but I'm just asking, you know, that, you know, based on the fact that it's happened before, I mean, could it be happening again? Could lightning be striking, twice at the same place?
You're asking me, is the possibility? Yes, it is the possibility.
Exactly.
We've seen this in, as I said, and we've seen this in other elections in other countries, most recently in Kenya, in the election that they had last year and the one 5 years before that. It is possible. But as I said, to be saying that right now means that we're now pointing fingers and looking for people that have actually taken bribes, corruption, or whatever you want to call it, to actually manipulate figures that come into the central server. And those people would only be a very few people who would be able to have access to that server.
All right, let's come back to our Lagos studio now. Mr. Chude, I know the value of troubleshooting this whole process, because it's our nation, Nigeria. We want the very best for it. So, I mean, I appreciate all of the passion, which is geared towards one thing, as we've said, this nation, this Nigeria. And I'd like to get your opinion on some of the issues raised. I see that you wanted to interject.
We hope that we have a conclusion to this. But you know, it is also said that a matter is never right until it is made right. Because the results now, at this moment, are no longer virgin. So when people talk about, because it strikes me that the horse has already left the barn and we're closing the door after it has bolted. And so what I'm trying to say is this. There were people that exercised their franchise at the polling unit. For whatever reason, the last part of the assignment that was supposed to be undertaken at that polling unit, that is the upload of results, sadly did not happen. And then days after, we are trying to upload, because anything that is being uploaded now, who is doing the uploading? The people who were at the polling units are long gone. They're no longer there. So when you talk about the trust deficit, what are they thinking of? You know, about the results that they did not see uploaded. You know, and that's why there are all kinds of confusion. You hear, perhaps a lot of them are lies, perhaps some of them are true.
But just the communication bit
Yeah.
was very important, just to pass the information across to
Yeah.
Nigerians. This is what's going on, and this is what we're doing about
Yeah.
it. About the laws, briefly, I mean, because it's a very interesting conversation as we wait for what's going to happen at the National Coalition Center. I looked at Section 60, that was mentioned earlier by Mr. Nkamuke. I tried to look through it, even Section 65, and I mean, it's clear on what can be done, who can do what, and at no point did it mention that the chairman of INEC is able to, stop collation or stop the process midway. Whether or not, I mean, people have raised issues. The laws are quite clear, and it takes me to the statement made by the West Africa Elders Forum. I think maybe by virtue of their experience where they've been, they are speaking from a point of view of, let's try to maintain peace. Let's follow this process and ensure that we have a nation at the end of the day. And the statement says that, well, it notes the imperative of retaining the confidence of Nigerians in the ongoing electoral process, and therefore urges INEC to thoroughly investigate those concerns and comply with the electoral law and the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria in that process. So far, has INEC made any infraction on those laws, so that at least, because what's more important also is what happens afterwards. As you said, there's no point closing the door when the horse has bolted. So it's important to look back, but we also need to look forward. So is INEC breaking any law? How should people handle this situation? So at least we better place ourselves as citizens to build this nation. I hope it's not a tricky question for you.
It's a tricky question.
It's a tricky question.
You see, INEC in this circumstance, in terms of perception, INEC is a culprit in the minds of people, because people are not happy about what has happened.
Whether rightly or wrongly.
That's what I'm saying, the minds of people. It is the election management body. Things have gone wrong with the election. People are saying, you had the responsibility for the election. We gave you money, 350 billion naira for the election. You have embarrassed us, or we are not happy with what we have seen. Put it right.
Okay.
Do you understand? Put it right. Are they in a position to put it right? You understand? Because they need to do all kinds of things, as well as also trying to protect their image and shield themselves from so much scrutiny, because they are the ones we are looking up to. So they also have limited options, and maybe that's where also civil society organizations and other bodies, people are writing, they are condemning, they are also giving recommendations.
True.
And it's part of the recommendation, the body you talked about, it's also giving. A lot of civil society organizations are also saying, look, this election, as far as we are concerned, did not pass the credibility test, but there are things that you need to do to put in place. And the thing about it is that after these observations, especially the international observers, when they come and they go, they might not be happy with what has happened, but after some time they will compile their final reports and send it to the government. Give
with
some of the recommendations to, you understand,
Yeah.
that we notice this, we notice it, this and this and this, in our opinion, are things that you need to change. Okay.
You can land on that point. I was just going to let us wind down on this, because, I mean, it's been a very interesting conversation. And let me go to Mr. Henshaw. I hope you exhausted that point, Mr. Chude.
Yes, okay.
I hope you did. So, Mr. Henshaw, as we wind down, that same question, I'm sure you've had some time to at least ponder upon it. So we look forward, also looking back, so we don't make the same mistakes. And ensure we empower the citizens who are listening, who are wondering, how do we navigate this with the right kind of mindset, first for our nation, and to fix those issues that we have?
Like I said earlier, it's a bit of a trick question, yeah? But I think, so we have a process which is ongoing, right? It may have been, it's a bit faulty at this moment, right? But we're not calling, I mean, I'm not calling for the total cancellation of the polls. You raised the point, and you read the laws, right? That INEC has not broken any law at the moment. I mean, it's acting within the space of the law. But I think that that's also a trick, part of that act, because if INEC has got the power to postpone an election when it finds out that it is not prepared, I think that the spirit of the law is to the effect that INEC also should have the power to halt collation and treat issues of malfeasance in the process, abusive issues in the process. INEC should have that power. I'm not familiar with the law, I'm not a lawyer, right? But INEC should
because
have that
it's
power.
not expressly stated
It's not expressly
there.
stated.
So that might be discretionary,
yes,
and then now be against the law. I mean, as lawyers will say.
Well, so the next thing which we need to think about is, I think we need to, the source of all this contention is back again to the BIVAS, right?
Indeed, yeah.
It's back again to the BIVAS.
Yeah.
And since we're speaking about the spirit of the law, let's speak also about the spirit of the Electoral Act and the spirit of those guidelines, right? That talks about BIVAS and uploading results. People, several hours, 3 days after the election, people say, yeah, but the results are out there. We now have 100,000 results up there. It's not the same thing.
Sure.
The idea about the BIVAS was, listen, it was a second level of credibility, of accountability for the electoral process, right? You vote, we'll upload the results, right? And while we are doing the collation on TV, you can compare. That was the idea. But now you have beaten the gun. You are now announcing the result when you have not put the thing out there. The entire process has been truncated. Now, put it differently. Uploading the result on the BIVAS is a part of the electoral process. Put it differently. What if we had people voting before accreditation? Would we accept the process, or will we turn it around?
But collation is usually manual in any case.
The point I'm saying is that
the eventual collation will be manual. In fact, as you said, it's just like it's a two-factor authentication, another layer to help people see that this process is transparent. But at the end of the day, what the law says is that the collation will see. That's why they have to go all the way to the nation's capital, the whole process. And a lot of people think it's tedious, but that's what the law says.
I agree with you absolutely. But the point I'm making is what should come first. The spirit of the law, the spirit of the guideline, the reason behind uploading results on the BIVAS was that citizens will be able to see that result and compare with what they are reading out in Abuja.
Yeah.
That was the idea.
Yeah.
You have failed that test. That test is failed. Again, I go back to the first point I made. How substantial is the malfeasance? How substantial is the credibility issue? Is it enough to overturn this, or is it enough to pause and check what's gone wrong?
Big question there. As we wind down, let's go to Abuja now and then touch base with Mr. Nkamuke. I think we're coasting home on this one. We're still taking a look at the visuals from the National Coalition Center, expecting some sort of activity to begin. So results, they'll be announced maybe in a matter of minutes or hours. We'll have a long way to go as a nation. Whether we like it or not, we cannot stop time. Those issues notwithstanding, if you were to speak to Nigerians, speak to the concerned parties, what would you be saying to them? Well, Mr. Nkamuke, pardon me, just a moment. We lost some part of what you said. So if you don't mind, please start from the top so Nigerians can get value of what you said. Okay, we'll come back to you, Mr. Nkamuke, just to resolve that. We'll come back, not to worry. Let me go to our guests on Zoom, Mr. Tobatele. And the same question, really, as we wind down, as we coast home on this one. What will be your parting shot?
Have faith that the BIVAS is catching people that are rigging. But Mr. Henshaw's point is that what we were told we were going to see is not what we saw. And that has to be resolved. If they hadn't told us that we were going to see figures then we wouldn't have been anticipating it. But that anticipation has created a huge deficit of trust, and it has to be addressed. As to the malfeasance that Mr. Henshaw was talking about, I haven't seen any of that because BIVAS is catching it immediately. But we've talked about in this session that there may be people inside INEC, but I don't want to point fingers. We should be grateful to the system that a lot of the root cause of the corruption has been caught at the polling booth by BIVAS, but we're not seeing it, and that seeing is the bit that's actually causing us a lot of anxiety.
All right, Mr. Alobita, thank you so much. Let's now head to Abuja. I think the audio is quite okay now. We wanted to get your thoughts, your final thoughts on this as we move forward, because whatever happens, the Collation Center is still open. The INEC chairman is maybe give a remark and then continue with the process. What will be your own thoughts and your message to the people of Nigeria, given what has happened and what we're looking at, what's on our hand right now? How would you address it?
Okay, fine. Yesterday we addressed the third press conference, which is the first one was on the day we inaugurated the Situation Room, and our message has been consistent in the Cali Secretariat. We praise the citizens who came out under rain, under the sun, to ensure that they cast their votes at the count, and we also side with them for the disappointment they have received. The issue is quite very straightforward. Whether the results is announced in the next few hours or in the next few minutes is a little immaterial to a lot of people. The INEC authorities have the right and have all the power to have halted parts of the processes that went wrong on Saturday. And they could have done that. And if they had done it proactively, people would know that they are on the side of the people. But the main reason they continued announcing the result irrespective of protestations from all over the country, I shows that there's something else wrong. One of that thing, again, is that apart from the thought force that emerged in this 2023 election that really aroused interest, another thing that really gave people confidence is the fact that there will be BIVAS and that the result will be transmitted automatically. And the INEC authorities continue harping on this. Now, when these failed, you have dashed the hope of a lot of people. We thought the INEC authority should have thought back their process and find out how to restore confidence of people. Right now, whether this result is announced now, whether there will be election on the 11th of March, I can tell you that if you take a plebiscite of so many people, the interest has really gone down. Because people are no more sure of anything.
Okay, let me.
Well, I think it's important to also situate that. I mean, people have their own decisions to make. They can choose to even, for that reason, want to even participate the more. And as you said, but that has not been done. I think it's a great place to anchor our panelists in the House. Thank you so much for your time, and I'll start with Mr. Chikechude, partner Reclaim Nigeria, an organizational member of the Civil Society Situation Room.
Since you have to go off, I just wanted to say that, look.
Oh, just your parting shot, right?
Yeah. You said something about lightning striking twice.
Oh, that was Victor.
Okay, that was good.
Yeah.
Now, there's a point I want to make, and that is the fact that now that INEC is in the eye of the storm, we have another election. We have an opportunity for INEC to right the wrongs of the past. Will they be able to do it?
So that's another opportunity.
It's another
which
opportunity
they can take charge of.
It's also another opportunity for Nigerians who have made a statement to continue with the statement they have made. They must participate in this process. They must be able to, they must realize that something is changing within the polity in this country. It's no longer 2. Now you have 3. Perhaps we have 4. So they need to push on to see whether they can, move the boundaries, But one thing that is very clear is that the politics of Nigeria will not be the same, at least the kind of things we have seen in the past few years.
I absolutely quite agree with you that it's not something that I would see again. It's going to be different, moving forward. But again, like we said, I would like to anchor. This is a good point, to anchor the conversation. So let me begin by saying thank you to you, Mr. Chude, a Chike partner at Reclaim Nigeria, as well as member of the Civil Society Situation Room. Thanks as well for joining us. Also to you, Mr. Ken Henshaw, election observer. Thanks as well.
You didn't make that mistake. That's good.
Not at all. I mean, we talked about it earlier. Let me not talk about it here. Let me just leave it here. Thanks so much as well. Ade Atobatele, systems consultant. You joined us via Zoom. Thanks as well, for being part of the conversation, as well as our guest in the Abuja studio, Mr. Joe Nkamuke, the Director for Good Governance at Caritas. Thank you as well for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Of course.